Dennis, thank you as always. Always good to work with a friend. We haven't done this in a while, although we will work a few times still throughout the summer on PGA Tour Radio, maybe even PGA Tour Live. You know, the first thing that struck me, Dennis, when I was doing a little poking around about the year 2000, obviously I know that's the year that you won the Buick Open. But we always talk about Tiger and his intimidation factor, and we'll get to that and what the locker room was like. But I read a quote by you, and you said something to a reporter the Sunday of the Buick Open when you won that tournament, and you said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, and you were talking about Tiger. You said, I need to think just like him. I need to think that I'm coming out here to win and I'm here to win this golf tournament, or why bother? You went on to beat David Duval when David Duval was at the height of his powers. Not everything Tiger brought to this game was hurting the tour and the players in the sense of intimidation factor. He lifted a lot of games, and it sounds to me like your Buick Open might have been one of those occurrences where Tiger might have lifted your level of play, at least from a psychological standpoint.
Tiger and I have this, I don't want to say a weird relationship, but I met him when he was like 12 or 13 years old, maybe even younger than that. The golf course that I grew up on had one of the biggest tournaments of the year. It was the Southern California match play for junior golf. And it was all the different age groups. And I was out of that now, but I'd played in it earlier in my career. And it was actually played at another course when I grew up. But once I aged out, it started being played at my club and it was really fun. So I got to meet Tiger. So I'd known Tiger, and maybe he looked up to me a little bit because I won, the 17-year-old age bracket for the year. I was the player of the year for the last year of junior golf in Southern California. So it was cool, but I wasn't anything special, but we had that relationship. And when I got on tour, Tiger and I only played twice together in our entire career. And both of them were on Sundays. And he played not a great round of golf, but shot 63 and ended up finishing second in where was that? That was at Disney, where Bob Burns won by a couple. And Tiger missed about a 5-footer on the last hole to shoot 62. And he didn't hit it great. And he didn't play very well when we played together the last round at the Western Open, where we were in the middle of the pack. I think he shot right around even par. And I could see clearly he wasn't really trying to win that tournament. He was hitting all these little low stingers and stuff, getting ready for the Open Championship, which he did win, I think, pretty much. But it was a pretty crazy year. I was thinking about his Tiger Slam and what he accomplished in that. And I had the fortune or misfortune to play in every one of those major championships and got beat by him on every one of them. So that I was wondering how many guys actually had that opportunity to actually compete in every one of those that he competed in. Now it's probably 50 to 100 players. I don't know, but it's still kind of a neat little stat that you got to witness greatness quite often. And that's the thing that I think is so great. I didn't see that my point of all this stuff was that Tiger didn't intimidate me when I played. We were like having a conversation, but we were never in a winning situation either for either one of us trying to win the golf tournament.
But it's interesting how you touch on something there. How you note the fact that in a way there was a big brother, little brother type of way you look at the guys who come up you play junior golf with that are older than you, that are winning things
Right.
you're aspiring to. And it's interesting that you touch on that because historically, especially in the year 2000, it's not until we get to Y.E. Yang 8 years later that the guys that had somewhat success, and success being sometimes on the losing end, but certainly pushed him. Think of the names, Dennis. Bob May, similar relationship to what you're referring to with yourself and Tiger. He grew up a California kid, couple years older than Tiger, somebody Tiger looked up to. Mark O'Meara, a bit of a mentoring relationship. Rocco Mediate on a Sunday, Monday at the US Open, a few years older. It's interesting how you kind of, if you think about it in those terms, the contemporaries might have melted. But the guys that grew up a little older in California or whether it be elsewhere, but they had that similar relationship. It was a different dynamic, wasn't it?
Oh, it's totally a different dynamic. You mentioned Mark O'Meara. I played with him in college. I got to play with Scott Simpson and Craig Stadler in college. And I was blown away by the fact that those guys were really, really good. And that's what I want to aspire to. and it was just this chance meetings. But one of the cool stories is that one of the best players at USC at the time wasn't Stads, and it wasn't Scott Simpson. It was a kid named Larry Collins was his name. Ray Collins worked at our place, and we gave the team an opportunity on the weekends to come out and play occasionally. And I got the fortune of getting to play with him. You're absolutely right. There's people that you look up to, and there's other people that I looked up to that never made it on the PGA Tour, but they were better than me. In fact, Jeff Eisenband the other day was out at the Truist, and he ran into a guy that was the stud junior at my club at 65 years old now, and he took a picture with him, and it's like, oh man, Danny, how you been, man? That's awesome. And he's still Danny to me, even though he's 65 years old now, but he was about 4 years older. So there's so much truth to that. It really is cool. And the intimidation factor, sadly for me, that everybody talks about with Tiger Woods, I just didn't have. We
Was there
had a different
conversation,
relationship.
Dennis? Like in the
What?
locker room, were there guys talking? For the guys that were more as contemporary, the younger guys, the guys that, maybe some people would say, rip the heart out of it on
Sure.
occasion. Like you got to feel for Ernie Els and at times Mickelson and a lot of guys, it was really only Duval and VJ for a sliver of time that seemed to get the best of him. And they were usually in windows when he decided to rebuild his swing for no apparent reason, right? Uh, was there a different chatter in the locker room where, were guys okay with it? Were guys peeved off? Like, do you remember anything about the time like that?
Not the upsetness. It's like, God, how is he this good? How is he continually? And I don't think that we really put it in perspective for what Tiger really was. His great golf was good, was really good. Was it the greatest ever? I don't know. But his bad golf might have been as great as anybody's. He didn't. How do you make 142 cuts in a row? I mean, you just don't do that. You had to have a bad. You go out and eat a lot. Okay. I saw Tiger at a lot of restaurants. Okay. Over the years, I remember seeing him twice at a PF Chang's in the same week in New York one time. So, I mean, you don't have one bad meal. You don't have one anything that really puts you in a situation where you just have a bad week and you miss the cut. And that is my greatest statement I can say about a player. Because if you took the top 10 or 15 rounds of golf this year, how many of those rounds of golf would be from the top players in the world? Possibly none of them. None of them really. The greatest rounds. I mean, Scotty Scheffler's round for the Olympics was incredible. Okay,
The
on the
Sunday.
final round. Was it actually on a Sunday? I don't
Sorry,
remember.
final
But
round.
whatever, the final round,
You
right?
and I have been doing this too long.
Right,
Everything's just
exactly.
Sunday, right?
So it's one of those things where you look at it, there was some 59 shot by younger kids out there. Is that a better round? I think when you talk about great rounds of golf, you got to beat everybody in the field by 3 shots that day at least to be a really great round of golf. To smoke the boat on everybody by 3 shots, that's a pretty darn good round of golf, but their floor is pretty low if we don't know really who they are or they haven't really done something. And that's the thing. You talk to top players in the world, and we talk about it. You and I talk about it all the time. Floors are the most important thing on the PGA Tour. What
Is
is
that
your floor? Do
does
you
that
live on the
speak
fifth floor or do you live in the basement?
right? Does that speak, Dennis, to maybe his greatest attribute? Obviously, when he first came out, he was pretty much as long or longer than anybody else with a 43.5-inch steel shaft driver, an older golf ball that spun a lot, yada, yada. We can get into all that. But at the end of the day, to make your bad golf really good and to never take a week off and to your point, never have a bad meal.
Right.
Is it just the 6 inches between the ears and what's in the chest and the heart that was the real difference?
I think that's the part that you never I never saw Tiger even think about quitting. Now I've done it a bunch where my numbers were always on a Friday where if I can't birdie in, pretty much I'm done. So I'm going to try to stay out of the way of the guys that I'm playing with. I'm not going to grind it out. I'm not slapping it around and eight putting because I don't care, but I'm just, but that's where if I'm not swinging well and I've been working on stuff on the range, then I'm going to make that uncomfortable swing on the golf course. Because you know how everybody talks about, I'm hitting it pretty good on the range, but I haven't been able to quite take it to the golf course. Every once in a while, you find it, and you make. I remember making a putt somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but I made a putt trying something different, and I went on a run where I filled the hole up for a while where I wasn't going to make the cut, but I really wasn't letting the putter release through the ball. I was blocking a lot of putts. I said, dude, just snap hook it, just snap hook it. End over end, ball right in the middle. I go, ooh, okay, I did it on the golf course finally. So those are the little things that you find, but he never did that. It was just down, distance, and go, down, distance, and go every single time.
All right, I've got three more for you before we let you go, and these could be tough ones. Maybe
Okay.
not. For me, they're pretty easy, but for some people, they struggle a little or they bounce around their heads. Pebble Beach, the four greatest days of professional golf. Is that the greatest performance by a professional golfer in a single tournament? Let's go post World War II. Let's go modern era. Is that as good as it gets?
I think so because I actually played. That was a week after I won, and I was in La La Land. I had a really bad first 9 holes of the tournament, and ended up hitting the ball out of bounds on 18 through the fairway, left of the tree. Think about that. I was playing that downwind that day, and I ended up posting a score, which I thought was probably going to miss the cut, but you didn't know because I was early and I was fried, so I just withdrew because I just didn't want to play the weekend. The golf course was just, I think it was a bordering on psycho. There was some 8-inch Kikuya out there in the rough. It was just crazy for me. And the greens were pretty bumpy, and Tiger put on an absolute clinic. I mean, it was, I couldn't imagine shooting under par on that golf course as hard as it was. And I knew Pebble as Pebble. So it was really weird for me. And Tiger knew Pebble as Pebble. He played in the state, our state open or state amateur was played at Pebble and Cypress back in the day. Way back in the day, we played Pebble and Cypress Point for our state amateur. So he knew that golf course that way. And then he understood it in the Open Championship or the US Open and blew away the field.
All
Blew
right,
him away. Yes, by far the best.
maybe this is a bit, maybe this is a little easier one because I agree with you. I mean, I've never seen anything like that in my lifetime. Greatest season ever, post World War II, Park Byron Nelson. That happened in 45. Hogan returning back to the game, doing his service, etc. Modern era, greatest season in the history of professional golf.
It's got to be, doesn't it? I mean, I hate to try to go back and, what Hogan did when he won, what, 5 or 6 events he played, or 4 or 5, he only played in 5, and they were major championships. That was pretty insane too. But he was on, I guess he was on one leg. He'd come back from that. But I mean, that was pretty impressive, but it's a small number and a small snapshot of what his season was. What Byron did. There was a lot of people that might not have been there, but I don't care who's playing. Even if they're 36-hole barbecue events, you win every single one of them. His scoring average was like 67, for the entire run that he was on. It was ridiculous. It wasn't like he shot 72s in one of those tournaments.
All right, and Dennis, this one, bit of an interesting one, and I'll give you my picks as well because maybe you'll agree, but I want to know how you feel. Tiger, I think, may have affected these two players' games more than anybody else. One in the positive and one in the negative. And I'll start with the positive. I think Tiger did more for Phil Mickelson's career in the positive than anybody else. And a lot of people think, oh, but think of all the majors that Phil would have won if he didn't have to go against Tiger in his prime. And I look at it a bit of a different way. Think of the way Phil got in shape. Think of how much harder Phil worked and how his game got elevated and then eventually going on to win 6 major championships. I'm not so sure if Phil ever gets in that kind of physical condition and ends up winning a major at age 50 if there's no Tiger Woods. I think Tiger affected Phil that way. Is there someone else that comes to mind like that in a positive light, or is that who comes to mind for you? And then the flip side of that coin, I wonder what Ernie Els' record would look like if there wasn't a Tiger Woods with all those second place finishes and all those chances at majors. I wonder how many Ernie would have finished with. Who comes to mind for you,
It's
Dennis?
pretty incredible. So, oh, young Padawan, you listened very closely because I've said a lot about Phil mentioning the fact that he never would have been as good a player if Tiger didn't push him. If he didn't push him, he would have worked out at maybe at all. Who knows? He started getting into shape, started eating a little better. He looks better now than he did. I mean, Phil can carry a lot of weight. He is a big guy. He's got big hands, big feet. He's broad shouldered. You know, I don't even know what he weighed, but I know that when I was at my heaviest, he was bigger than me and I was at 240. I mean, but he didn't, it wasn't super fat. He's just so big. I mean, weren't you surprised like the first time you met him, how much bigger he was? Just thick.
He is
He's
thick.
massive.
His feet are huge. His
Right.
hands. He is just a deceivingly big guy. You just don't get it on TV. When you're
Right.
beside him, you're right, Dennis.
So there's no question that that's the case. And Ernie, I got to see Ernie for the very first time. I just missed getting through the second stage to go to finals for Q school. I think that's what it was. Yeah. And I just buried my grandfather who got me started in the game like 2 days before I left, and then went to it and didn't play very well. And Brant Job comes up to me and goes, "Dude, I just played with this guy named Ernie Els. You got to see him. He's in a playoff. He was in a playoff to get to the finals of Q school." And I want to say this was in the 93 for the 94 season, maybe. Um, and I go, "Dude, I really don't want." He goes, "Just go to watch him hit it, make a swing." And I see this practice swing and I go, that wasn't a practice swing. That was his actual swing. He didn't even try. And he just hit this one iron off the tee that just whoosh. Oh my gosh, that Brant was right. This guy's going to be something special. Went on to win the US Open. Not much time after
Yeah.
that. I mean, it was incredible. So I think Ernie Els probably took the brunt the most. And I think Phil Mickelson and VJ Singh got the most from Tiger Woods in our era of what they decided to become because of what Tiger was doing. Ernie just was blessed with what he did. I don't know. I never saw Ernie lift a weight, but it sure looked like he did lift some weights because he was pretty big and pretty thick too. But maybe he was just blessed, with that body and the unbelievable tempo. But those three, I think, are the best names. I really can't think of anybody else other than Mark O'Mara was a huge part of it because he looked up to him and did those things. Same with John Cook. John Cook too. And, Cookie and I have known each other forever. He was, I think, 17 when I was 13 playing junior golf in Southern California. So I've known Cookie for a long, long time.
DP, before we say goodbye, one word to describe Tigers 2000. If you just had to put one word on it, title of the Tiger movie one day when we look back and maybe someone produces a feature film about the year 2000 on the PGA Tour, you call it what?
Truly unexplainable.
It's that good.
It's
Dennis,
so
thanks.
good.
Thanks for always doing it, man.
He kicked my ass every chance he had.